right. Smooth fade out.
Love
Gabby,
it.
I'll pass to you. Yeah.
Thanks, Sanya. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining our live talk session today as we welcome Sanya Haque, our wonderful host. Sanya has over a decade of hands-on experience working within the South Asian music industry and is really well known for advocating for a greater understanding of music and listeners from different cultures. We're really excited to have you with us today, Sanya, and I'm sure we'll all be learning a lot from you within the next hour. I know I will be. For those of you who haven't joined a Live Talks before, my name's Gabby. I'm the head of partnerships at Live and I run the Live Talks programme. So before I hand over to Sanya, I just need to do a little bit of housekeeping. Please note we are recording today's session to share online for those unable to join. If you would rather remain anonymous, please feel free to keep your camera turned off and change your Zoom name to anonymous. But of course, we much prefer to see everyone's faces. Please make sure your mic is muted throughout to avoid any interference. If we have some time left at the end, we will open up the floor to questions, but please also feel free to put any questions you have in the Zoom chat and we'll do our best to answer those at the end. And that's it from me. Over to you, Sanya.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you so much for getting me to do this. I have to say that it's a real privilege running this session. It is, of course, about music and live music, but it's about a lot more than that. And it's about identity and belonging and kind of the South Asian experience here in the UK. That said, it feels like a big responsibility, and I want to do it justice. And I want to make sure, obviously, one person alone, even as an expert, I cannot claim to represent the whole community. But I really do hope that this gives you some insight. And what I wanted to start with is kind of growing up in the UK in the 90s and early 2000s, and that video that I just showed was from around 2001. But pre that, it wasn't always that easy to outwardly express your South Asian identity or to say that you love the music, the films, the culture. There were often a lot of stereotypes and judgments, and honestly, not always just from the wider population, but also from within South Asian communities. There's almost an internalized sense that our music, our culture, and weren't cool enough, and that neither were those of us who liked it. And so often a lot of that cultural expression was done behind closed doors and in spaces that felt safe. And I distinctly remember that Basement Jack song coming out in around 2001. And my gran was a musician, and I'd be like so excited to show her. And I was like, oh my God, it's our music. It's out there. Our culture, the sounds, it's being appreciated in the mainstream. And just seeing her joy for me was, I think, one of the defining moments and reasons why I feel so it's so important for me to do this work and try to highlight those opportunities. And I feel really lucky to have support from Gabby, the live team, and others now in doing that. I won't spend too much time then talking about my bio. Gabby's obviously introduced me. Thank you so much. But yes, just to say that I was previously working a lot in music research at a company called AudienceNet. And then in the last 2 years, I've set up my own business called Bite to Stereotypes, where I bring together my passion for research, diversity, and data, along with kind of the hands-on work that I do with South Asian communities in particular, such as in music and dance. So a bit about today's session. As an overview, I sort of want to start with giving a bit of context to the music industry and helping us understand how South Asian music kind of fits within that broader ecosystem. So we'll set the scene with a few of those slides. And then I want to talk about, what I've defined as 3 broad categories of South Asian live music in the UK. So the first being the Bollywood and global South Asian superstars. Then we'll look specifically at the diaspora experience here in the UK for diaspora artists. And then we'll look at the South Asian underground, which has sort of been a scene that's always been there. And then, as Gabby mentioned, we'll stop for Q&A, and I'm really hopeful that hopefully we'll have lots of interesting questions and help you understand this more, because I know for a lot of people this might be your beginning of your journey in South Asian music. So I hope the session gives you some overview, an understanding of the opportunities, and there are also a lot of challenges that perhaps be great if people might want to support within stuff as well. So hopefully I'll give you a good understanding of kind of a 360-degree picture of what's going on. So starting then with some of you may have seen this, the classic music industry growth. Now, of course, we're looking at live here, but I guess the counterpart being the recorded side and an artist. So we know that music is now in its 9th consecutive year of growth, which is great. And 2023, which is where this IFPI data is from, was the second highest growth rate on record. However, we are seeing that growth is starting to slow down as streaming is beginning to peak, and saturate streaming services in more mature music markets. So one way in order to sustain this growth in music is to focus on global markets where there's still high proportions of untapped audiences. So we're seeing that kind of focus now on global markets. I've actually, since 2015, been going on and on about opportunities within global markets. And like with a lot of diversity and inclusion work, often it does take seeing the commercial opportunity to then get sustainable progress and change. So what we're seeing here is that year on year, markets from the south and east of the world are growing rapidly. We're seeing double-digit growth year on year, whereas the more mature music markets are kind of seeing flatter, consistent but flatter sort of growth. So it's becoming clear that, right, South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa in particular at the minute, and then the Middle East, North Africa are where there's lots of opportunities for music as a way of helping the industry continue to grow. You may have also seen some of these figures, which are from Luminate, which were talking about how the share of English music, specifically tracks in English in the top 10,000 stream tracks, the share of English is starting to decline. So you're basically seeing a higher share of tracks from other languages. We're seeing a lot of also the richness. Now, it has always been there. I was actually doing a panel on this a few weeks ago. The global markets have not just turned up out of nowhere. The consumption was always there. It was always very rich. But streaming is allowing us to see that. And we're actually, given the size of some of these markets, starting to see that they're taking up a bigger share of the kind of overall music consumption landscape. So we see now that Hindi is one of the fastest growing music languages. And if you look at music in India, it's also very much now diversifying beyond just Bollywood. So you're seeing a rise of regional music, you're seeing a rise of pop artists, which we'll look at as well. And that's then also reflected in the consumption habits of the diaspora here in the UK and in other countries. A little bit about fandom. Now, fandom is something that the industry has been looking at for some time, and I've been looking at too, and there wasn't that much publicly available data until, again, shout out to the Illuminate team for doing this study on fandom. A few things to look at here, but essentially music is really, really integral to what we define as super fans, which if you take the US, it's approximately 15% of the population. So it's how they signal their identity to the outside world, how they express their identity, and also how they connect with broader communities. While there's no data on this for the South Asian diaspora, and I am working really hard to change that because we generally lack data on South Asian audiences in the UK, I would argue that they're actually perhaps over-indexed, more likely to be super fans, not just of artists, but of South Asian music and the genres as a whole. And you see that very much on social media, but you see that a lot through engagement with live shows. So we'll talk about that a lot more today, but just want you to bear that in mind. South Asian music, Indian music's really growing, and you've got a lot of super fans there that you can tap into, but as we'll look at, it's not always straightforward as such. Okay, so starting then, now that we've set the scene, the Bollywood and global superstars, South Asian superstars are sort of the first of our areas. So, as I've mentioned a few times, South Asian music has been a really, really core part of people's identities, but it wasn't necessarily always something that you could outwardly display. But these shows, these large shows, which happened. They're called, I remember Live 98 for some reason just really sticks in my mind. But they were shows when you'd have Bollywood superstars come. So Shah Rukh Khan, or here my personal favorite, Salman Khan, they'd come for stage shows in like Wembley Arena or football stadiums. I think we went to Chelsea and Southampton, and it was just the biggest thing ever because these were our Bollywood icons that were coming to the UK and massive productions. So this has always been happening. But again, not everyone necessarily knew about it or went, but they were a way for South Asians to connect with their identity, their culture, and express that, and also to connect with older generations who back then were, the 90s or whatever. It was sort of newer, and there were concerns around, oh, are people disconnecting from identity? But these sort of music moments were always ways to remain connected. So these shows were generally often every year or every other year. And I honestly, I was like, right, I'll Google it. I'll show you guys some examples, but there really isn't that much out there online. I think because it was, pre the days of social media and that much internet. But so yeah, this just gives you an example. Um, but they were like, you'd go to places like Southall to buy your tickets from the stores, and you'd always see the new poster, and it was like, oh my God, so and so's coming! Like, how exciting! We have to all get tickets, save up. And even then, tickets weren't cheap. They would start from maybe like £25, which is quite a lot in the 90s, going up all the way to like £100 if you wanted to be at the front. So this was sort of always going on. And again, at major venues. Um, Now, actually, funnily enough, they are less common, these shows with the Bollywood celebrities. That's not to say that Bollywood's lost its significance, because if anything, it's even more prominent with social media and all of the dance trends. So younger generations are very connected, but these shows are not kind of, I guess, the focal ones as such. What are the focal shows now are the rise of the global superstars. So some of you may know that Bollywood's had this kind of playback culture history where you'd have singers like Lata Mangeshkar and others who would sing, and then the stars would lip sing, even on stage shows. Sometimes the singers would be there in the back, but often it would be just be the track and they would lip sync to that. But now it's very much changing. So you're seeing superstars like Arijit Singh, Shreya Ghoshal, Atif Aslam, who are really becoming major celebrities in their own right. And one star, actually, Neha Kakkar, is the playback singer, is a singer, and mostly for Bollywood. And she's one of the most followed people on social media. She's got 80 million followers, and definitely one of the most followed Indians. I think one of the most followed people out there. So it's crazy how much people are connecting with these artists. We're also now seeing that it's the independent artists. So the artists that are generally do some dabbling in Bollywood, but are just music stars in their own right, be it of Punjabi music, be it of Indian pop or rap or hip hop. And you've got artists like Badshah, Diljit Dosanjh, AP Dylan, Karan Aujla. Those artists are very much your huge superstars. And if you follow me on social media, I'm always talking about Diljit every 2 minutes on LinkedIn and everywhere. But it's amazing to see. What we're also seeing is these cross collaborations between Western stars and these major icons. So I don't know if so much in the public or the broader domain anyone saw, but Ed Sheeran has featured across the summer in like Arijit Singh's show at the O2 and also at Diljit Dosanjh's show at the O2. It's kind of crazy. Like, obviously, Ed is one of the biggest stars, and for him to be there, be creating content. And also when he went to India, it was a huge, his tour was huge, and Diljit Dosanjh came on. So you're now seeing these more meaningful collaborations that I think we probably wouldn't have dreamed about even a couple of years ago. They don't feel like tokenism. They feel like actually artists coming together and realizing the power of both their platforms. For both artists, it's almost parallel. So yeah, the other trend, and on the left here, the global rise of South Asian music. This is an article I wrote for Chartmetric, which you can have a look at in a little bit more detail if it's of interest. But I talk quite a bit about that changing landscape. And whereas in the 90s and early 2000s, the trend was very much to make music in South Asian music in English that could cross over, and you had your Jay Sean's and you had others. But now the music that's really connecting with the diaspora is that which is really culturally rich. So Diljit sings purely pretty much in Punjabi. He doesn't speak much English even, but he is connecting with these audiences like massively. There are also some nuances I wanted to say, which obviously the South Asian diaspora is not monolithic. You have within that in the UK different languages that are spoken, different religions, but this music element is very unifying. And Diljit sings in Punjabi, but you'll see that a lot of his fans are people who don't speak Punjabi but can understand some, or even may not understand, but are fans of South Asian music or speak Hindi and stuff, and you can kind of make it out. So that's also really nice that it's that culturally rich music that's really connecting with younger audiences, which I think there was a point a while ago people weren't sure, but it is very authenticity is what everyone's leaning into and is working. So these shows are very, very common. Like I mentioned, just over the summer, there were about 3, 4 major superstars, South Asian superstars, that were selling out venues like the O2 or in Birmingham, etc. So you'll see, and also ticket prices are not cheap. Like Diljit tickets were retailing between 200 to 500 pounds, which is a lot. I think in general, I think for South Asian artists is also a lot. I don't know the science behind ticket pricing, but it definitely feels like it's a tricky one. And just my only concern with that is it's perhaps not a sustainable price if people want to go see a lot of different artists. But nonetheless, these shows are sold out. People were going multiple times. And so it's not just a music event, it's like a cultural experience. So I almost missed out on tickets, but shout out to my friend Chris Carey, who I don't know if he's on or not, but thankfully managed to like hook me up at the last show, Diljit's last show at the O2, which was on Friday. And I've been posting this on my socials, so some of you might have seen it already, but hopefully this gives you an insight into just how vibrant these events are.
Get ready to witness the biggest Punjabi artist on the planet.
What's up, man? What's up? Diljit coming in.
Punjabi आ गए हुए पंजाबी आ गए हुए
Diljit is the first Indian artist in the world to be featured on a global Billboard cover.
So yeah, so this was just an unbelievable moment. Firstly, two of my friends were there dancing on stage, which was like really exciting to see them be part of that. The other thing is also the song right at the end there is a collaboration between Diljit and Sia, which I might play later for our outro. But that is one of the biggest collaborations, and Sia actually sings in Punjabi in it as well. So it's probably one of the most successful kind of fusion of artists coming together. You also may have seen that Billboard were there. So Diljit is getting huge amounts of attention. He was on the Jimmy Fallon show. He's now on Billboard's Canada cover. So people are increasingly starting to be like, okay, wow, this is super interesting. What's going on? Let's get involved. So there's definitely, the curve is there. We're on the curve. So it's not about like getting ahead of it. It's now kind of, I guess, building that momentum. So the key takeaway I wanted to leave for this particular category is that these large-scale events have historically shaped the UK South Asian music landscape, and they're now even more visible, and there's even greater demand than there ever has been, and beyond just Bollywood as well. So there's a significant opportunity for venues and others to really get involved in this space and continue to help it grow. Right, we'll go on to the next one. I will also say, please I know there's comments in the chat, keep them coming as and when you get thoughts, and we'll definitely make sure we have a look and run through any questions at the end. Okay, so this next one is looking at the ecosystem of South Asian diaspora artists in the UK. And this is one I've been talking about a lot, because having done a lot of music industry research for UK music, the IPO and others, and really understanding the challenges that artists face in the UK. And it's not easy. It's not easy for any artist, but I do feel there are very specific challenges faced by diaspora artists that could really benefit from additional support and understanding. And so this for me is a particular area that I feel like there's opportunities to really help with. And if it is one you want to get into, it's just understanding the nuances. So starting here with the significance of Melas. Now, things like the London Mela, which started in 2003, play a hugely significant role in the South Asian experience here in the UK. I mentioned that it wasn't always easy to express that identity. And I know that some of my friends that weren't that into the live 98 style Bollywood gigs I used to go to were like the face of the Mela. Like they're in like the pictures and the visuals because they loved the Melas. And the beauty of that is it did allow people to express that identity, embrace that identity more publicly. So that was a really, really nice cultural shift. And the Millers include a lot of things like South Asian dance, food, the arts. They attract South Asian audiences and also broader audiences. But music was always very much at the heart of them. And it still is. So London Miller, I think is still around, but you're seeing a lot of kind of local and regional Millers. So across London, you've got Hounslow Miller, you've got Wembley Miller, then you've got Millers like all across the country, which are great. And it is where you see the creme de la creme of South Asian artists. So on the right, you see here, these are the biggest stars, Jazz Dami, Zach Knight, Rackstar, etc. It is where you see the best of the best, which is great from an exposure point of view and getting audiences to see the artist. But my challenge here, which I've thought about for a while, is because the tickets for Melas are either free or they're very cheap, like 10, 12 pounds in the mind of the consumer, you're just, I feel, not valuing South Asian artists perhaps financially in the same way. So you're not in that kind of behavior pattern of paying for the artist in the same way you would for a Taylor Swift or even now for like a Diljit. So that's just something in my mind that I think can be a little bit of a thing that we have to overcome. Looking then at how do we build a sustainable ecosystem for South Asian music? So, slightly controversial point, but the thing here is that it does have its ups and downs that I want to sort of talk through. So, building on some of the last stuff. So, generally, there's a lack of visibility for diaspora artists. They don't tend to feature very much in the mainstream UK music industry, such as the Brits or other events, or in the global South Asian music scene. So that for me feels like it can mean that people sometimes undervalue them or actually aren't aware of them so much. So there are those challenges in the audience. This audience that are, going to the O2 and paying all of that money sometimes aren't aware of actually a lot of the talent that we have in the UK, and we've got a lot of it. It's thriving. It's really quite cool to see right now. On that point as well, that music. So I wrote this piece about Raf Sapera, who is an up and coming, like amazing artist from the UK. He also sings in Punjabi. He's really doing super well. And I wrote this piece for him, and he was super supportive, and it was great. And he's really amazing. But these artists too are singing and creating original sounds. It's not, again, like I said, about trying to create music that will cross over so much. It's about creating rich music that's not just trying to, I don't know, like be a parallel to a certain genre and perhaps not doing it as well. It's actually very unique sounds too. So it's just kind of understanding that. So if that article perhaps might give you a little bit more insight into that. These what I call escaping the Bermuda Triangle. So I feel like South Asian diaspora artists sort of get stuck and lost in this triangle and can't quite get out in the same way, or they're overshadowed by other artists. Then generally I find that funding and other industry resources tend to be underused by diaspora artists. That could be due to a lack of even access of the right types of stuff or awareness. And as I've been saying a few times, the audience is different. while you've got maybe 2 billion potential, listeners of your music that are part of the culture or kind of interested in it, it's not that easy for the diaspora artists to reach them because they're up against your Beyoncés and they're up against Diljit. So I just feel like it's really hard for them to know who their audience is, how to reach those. So again, more support here, I think, is much needed. There were also previously platforms like BBC Asian Network Live, which was great because it featured diaspora artists alongside global South Asian talent, and also the Asian Music Awards that recognize diaspora artists. So both of those kind of gave a lot of respect and interest among the audience. Again, this is just my inference, but I feel like from a community that sometimes had to feel a bit shy about its culture and not able to express it, there's just that, like, you kind of maybe don't value certain artists, you feel like, oh, they're not cool enough, but until something platforms them and you're like, oh my God, they're amazing, you feel a bit more confident. So it's just remembering some of that mindset that could perhaps be, I think, why some of the barriers are there for South Asian artists. Because like I said, the talent now in particular is not the issue. There's a lot of it. But yeah, these platforms are no longer there, sadly, in the same way, which does make me feel there is a gap and a need for that. You do have independent initiatives. So I don't know if Anna from Asian Tones is on, but she's doing a great job of creating live music events, platforming South Asian and other Asian artists and consistently. And that's not really there. And she's doing that off of her own back and the team's back, which is great to see. Also, the work that Bolico does, Bolico Live, we host a lot of our own events. Again, it's their own initiative and money. And the nice thing about Bolico is there's a very vibrant audience that aren't necessarily aware of the artist, but they love music and dance. So we're then able to bring them together and be like, hey, here's this experience with diaspora artists, and we've got an engaged audience. So it's sort of matching up those two, which platforms like ours are tending to do. So for this particular one then, I wanted to flag the key takeaway here being that diaspora artists are an essential part of sort of the UK and the UK music industry. They are critical for, I guess, representation of South Asians within the industry. However, they face a lot of challenges related to visibility and financial sustainability of their careers in what is, quite honestly, a very competitive market. So what I feel is that smaller venues can play a really critical role in supporting these artists and platforms like Asian Tones or Bolico, especially if they're able to understand the constraints that artists might face or platforms might face in terms of ticket prices or audience demand and understanding. Okay. Moving then on to the final section, and I might show a video here if I just, when we get to that page, I'll just pull it up. So this last one is the South Asian Underground. So it's an area that we're seeing a lot of progress in. And it's also an area that I've been doing a lot of work, such as supporting with the arrival stage. But honestly, it's quite funny because I've never really been edgy or cool enough to be part of any underground movement, but I find it really interesting. And I guess I've been part of it from more of a analytical business point of view. So this scene, I don't know if anyone used to go to this or any events, but it's always been a place where people can express their identity. And like a lot of underground movements, like I said, it's a little bit hidden and it's one of those if you know style situations. So there are a lot of like day raves called daytimers, which turns out my friends used to go to, and I had no idea. You had to like bunk school, and I probably would have been too scared anyway. But yeah, these have been around since like the 80s, the 90s, and they're making a real resurgence now. And these sorts of events. So you would have seen like a boiler room event specifically. There was one in Southall. And what's driving this movement is kind of DJs. It's very DJ based, and they're blending traditional Bollywood music often with more modern mainstream sounds such as drill or house. And so what they are doing is they're really appealing, and to the sense of actually these younger audiences do want to connect with South Asian music. They really are still very much rooted in that, but they also like this kind of new take on it. So it's really getting a huge audience. And actually, like I said, I feel there's a bit more crossover appeal perhaps here, which you can struggle with certain music or culturally rich music, but perhaps it seems to be attracting or open to people who are also interested in genres like electronic music, etc. And one of the key organizations behind this is actually called the Daytimers. And you'll see here that they have lots of events that they put on of this kind. And another is Going South, which Bobby Friction, who's a legendary DJ and pioneer, has set up, and I've been supporting him with. So that's another one that's really been pushing the kind of electro scene. Okay, so I want to show this video. If you bear with me, I'll just run through this slide and then I will pull up this video just because we do have time to show it. I was worried we wouldn't, so we'll run through that. It's like a few minute video, but we can just look at some highlights. So this year, let me just talk through. So it was a huge moment for South Asian music. The Arrival stage was the first ever dedicated South Asian space within the festival. And Bobby Friction, this was his vision. And I remember him telling me about it. He's like, we're going to be at Glastonbury. And then he brought in like other kind of pioneers in the space, such as the team from Dialed In, and also Vikram from Leela to help kind of make it happen and build it out. And we're spent quite a lot of time trying to get in front of festivals and highlight it. And I think some of you may be aware when Diljit Dosanjh played Coachella a couple of years ago, that was a real turning point because festivals were like, oh, whoa, hold on, this is happening. Whether it's from an inclusivity point of view or an audience point of view, we need to really get on top of this. So Glastonbury was super were great, and this is how this kind of came together. So I'll just read a few of Bobby's quotes here. So this is a seminal moment for UK music festival culture. South Asian and British Asian music have had their own small festivals over the years, and some Asian artists have performed in big gatherings that are a quintessential part of British summer. But a full-on Glastonbury space dedicated to South Asian music, beats, and DJs for the entire festival, that's just crazy and a personal dream come true. So this was just absolutely huge. And I will just bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to pull up the video and put it on screen. This was actually, so the PRS did a feature. PRS Glastonbury. A feature on it, so you can go find that article and have a read. But we'll watch the video. So we, sorry, just give me that. Right, 2 seconds. Age cluster. Oh, there was one lesson. Okay, here we go. Just a minute. So you can see how it came to life. So it was this kind of, it was supposed to be this psychedelic electro space. So yeah, let's just have a sort of.
I think Glastonbury's going to put the whole South Asian music scene on the map.
It feels like we're making history. It really does.
There are chances to see live South Asian music globally. But Glastonbury is the motherlode when it comes to festivals. It's a petri dish. Everything that happens here then infects the rest of the industry. So it's, I think, a very important and seminal moment, not just for Asian music and South Asian beats, but for Glastonbury themselves.
The South Asian underground has always been part of the musical fabric when we're thinking about British music. And it's great that we've got a physical space here, and that, to me, feels all the more richer and layered because South Asian music has been part of British music for decades. And so it feels like having DJ Ritu, for example, opening on the Thursday night was a complete full circle, because people like DJ Ritu, Sanjay Sanj, Bobby Friction have been part of the lots of different kinds of people before us that have set way. So it feels like we're like, cool, we're like moving forward with that energy.
Last year, we did 2 Going South takeovers, and essentially, you turn up with your DJs, you play, everyone loves it, you hug each other, you go, thanks a lot, and you leave.
To then be asked to come back and then now have a physical, permanent space within Shangri-La is incredible. I think it's reflective of what the scene is actually like on the ground.
This is one of the reasons why Leela, Going South, Dialed In, the Daytimers all work together. It's that whole thing of actually building a tent from nothing, building a space from nothing, conceptualizing a space, the designers involved, the people cutting the wood. You know, even our sound system has been made by the Vedic Root sound system. Someone's put a bit of thought into every bit of the space. Everything means something. It's not, let's put some speakers up, let's crank up the volume. There's real, even around here, you know, the carom boards, these in North India, we call them munjir. You know, I used to lie down on one in India when I was a kid, and they're back here in this beautiful garden.
It's really lovely. I feel at home, and I'm also really proud that my culture's represented. And it's really nice to show off the music. The DJ lineup is outrageously good.
I think that people that come to Arrivals will be really in awe of the musical diversity that we play, that the South Asian community plays. South Asian music, quote unquote, is still in development. We're in very early stages of what those genres might be called. But at the same time, we love jungle, we love breaks, we love hip hop, we love Afrobeats, dancehall, R&B, drum and bass, techno. Like, we have Bollywood edits, we have music that is sampled from our classical heritage. And music and creativity has always been part of the South Asian DNA.
I think the whole tagline is by South Asians and for everyone. I think it's really important to be inclusive with our music. I really want everyone to come in and have a great experience. I mean, the dream is every single person in Glastonbury comes in here at some point over the weekend and takes something away. You know, I want people to Shazam the sets and get obsessed with an artist, and that would be the ultimate dream.
When I look out and I see like the queues just going like down the shop fronts, and it's been like that all night, and to see such a diverse community, loads of people, whether they're different ages, different races, loads of different kinds of people are queuing up, and it feels like people actually rate what we do and really are curious and want to be involved. It's beautiful because the South Asian community know that that space is for us. So come in, and you want to sit down, you want to have a chat, you want to connect to yourself, you can do that in that space. And then anyone else that's not South Asian is there and welcome to come in and celebrate our culture and our expression with us. I can't describe that sort of feeling. It feels like we're making history. It really does.
South Asians are massively underrepresented in the music industry. You know, I don't have the statistics on me, but it's about 50% of what it should be. And I think we want to get our tentacles into all parts of the industry and production. You know, South Asians are underrepresented in festival production and festivals in general. So it's actually about changing the entire landscape, not just putting on a one-off tent and maybe we'll get it back next year, but hopefully next year we won't even have to, petition. It will just be a given. Yeah. I want this to be a permanent space.
The support we've got is incredible from press, from people like PRS, and that support also looks like supporting live acts. You know, we've got loads of people now that actually feel like they can apply for the ISF, for example, as part of the TDP network. And so to see lots of different types of South Asian expression be received is a feeling like no other.
For me, it's a fine balance. On one side, I want them to go away and tell their friends, I went to a South Asian space at Glastonbury. Mate, the music was unbelievable, because a lot of this music doesn't get played on mainstream radio or even South Asian radio. But then at the same time, as I say, it's a fine balance. I also want them to walk away and maybe not even realise that they've had a South Asian musical experience.
Arrivals isn't going anywhere. It's something that has been created for Glastonbury in this space to exist. And that having physical space is like, that's like 10/10. What more could you want?
Okay, so this, I don't know if anyone's seen this video or if they were aware of it. So that was Bobby Friction, and someone was asking who was next to Bobby. It's Vikram from Leela, and Leela is a new organization that's very much championing South Asian music. But yes, this was a video, a specific documentary that PRS did of the arrival stage. And there are a few things there when we were pitching for this. A lot of it is like, actually, we need to increase South Asian representation in venues, in those decision-making positions, or actually not even if it's not the people, but the awareness of what the audiences in the genre, and hopefully sessions like this can really help. Like I said, we've seen not just interest from Glastonbury, but the team and Bobby are actually doing the opening of Womex, the Womex conference festival thing. So you're seeing DJs and dancers at that. So it's now starting to spread. And like I said, it's not about, there's always going to be this balance, which we'll come to, which is like Bobby was saying, how do you convert everyone to South Asian music listening? That may not always be possible, but actually in that moment they might experience it and enjoy it, and you've then got people feeling seen. So there's a few things there, but for us, what we wanted to showcase here is, and like everyone was saying on the video, South Asians have been a big part of UK history and music, and it's still a focal point, that the country and the audiences, and it's just bringing them into these spaces to feel seen, to maybe get them going to more festivals. So there's a whole kind of systemic element that's really happening here, and that's what Arrivals really did signify. So just to wrap up on that section, and it is to say that these gigs are hugely appealing, and if you want those young South Asian audiences, then this is one really great way to do it. There's no shortage of gigs and organizations that are putting on these sorts of events, and it's a great way for festivals and smaller venues to kind of take a ready-made product and put it in. Whereas I mentioned for the last category with diaspora audiences, there's still quite a lot of work to do to kind of help and support and platform. Here, it's almost taking something that's working and then just opening it out to your venue or whatever else it might be. Okay, so I was mindful when I was building this, how much and how complicated to make it. I didn't want to overwhelm, so hopefully that's given you a bit of a overview of the categories, and I'll just go on to kind of recap that and what we've looked at. So the first point is that large scale events have historically shaped the sort of UK South Asian music landscape. They've always been there, but they are changing now. And you've got those artists coming to the forefront, and they're even more visible, and there's even more demand than there ever has been. And they are such a big part of the way South Asians express their identities and now feel that they can publicly do that. Like I keep flying the flag for, diaspora artists are hugely talented, but they do get overshadowed sometimes, sadly. And I do feel like this is where we do need venues to take a bit of a chance and be like, okay, can we platform the artists in this, or can we like de-risk it somehow? Is there a bigger gig where you can also then just put a South Asian artist? Because often when we'll bid for venues, they'll be like, how many events have you put on? And it's a bit, we may not have that history because there just isn't that demand or support. So I feel like there's some structural stuff here that could really, really help and boost and bolster the ecosystem in the UK. And then finally, yes, the underground is where it's very much at, and that really aligns well with what I think festivals and other venues can do, and they're really starting to really grow there and put on more of those sorts of events. So that kind of brings us to the end of the main content. I wanted to leave about at least 15 minutes or so for questions. I can see some coming through the chat. And again, like I said, happy to give a little bit more detail on any of the particular sections or elements. Yes, please do feel free. Like, Gabby, should we let people unmute and ask, or should I have a look through the?
You can raise your hand in the Zoom call, or just shout out if people are being quiet. I know Priya from the Boiler Room in Guildford has been very helpfully linking lots of the articles for us in the chat.
Yes,
but
Priya's
also,
great.
Has a did they have any questions? Priya, did you have anything else you wanted to speak to Sanya about or ask?
Hiya, so my name's Priya, and I reached out to Sanya, and then I reached out to Gabby as well, like when I found out that her event was going to be on as part of Live, I think about like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
I was very excited to see this. I've just really only started at the Boiler Room in Guildford. It's a 275 cap venue. John knows us quite well. I've like met him as well at a recent live event that he did as well. But I was going to ask Sanya, like, what can small venues do to help? Because at the moment, I am working with the founder there about putting on more diverse things, but I don't want it to be like a kind of novelty diverse night. I want to get Asian supports to come in when we have like bands on, so that
Yeah.
it's just a normal thing that you see all the time. Like, and I'm trying to get in contact with like one of my favorite bands of all time is Echo Belly. I did my dissertation on Britpop and social
Yeah.
class and things. And you know, we've got like a lead singer of like a 90s Brit band who's like just gone under the radar, and like maybe we can get her back in. Just Asians doing normal things in like normal
Yeah.
places. Like, I don't know what can we do to help that just look
Yeah.
normal?
No, it's a great question. So we did some work actually with Dishoom in Brighton. So it was they were opening their new Dishoom, and we're going south. We had this residency. So every Thursday, as part of like the night, there was like a DJ night, and we had South Asian DJs. A lot of South Asian local DJs was the focus. So people from Brighton. So that's one nice way to do it. Just kind of put on something like regular, and then just get someone in on that. So like you said, it's got that longer term element. Depending on the population of Guildford and how diverse that is, it is thinking about, okay, if you put on a South Asian artist, what does that mean for your broader consumers? If you're a Dishoom, it's fine, it's an Indian restaurant, so people will be more accustomed. But will it mean that people might feel, oh, can we go? It's an Asian night, are we imposing? There's always that, with Asian music, for some reason, there's always this the consideration element from mainstream as well. People may feel, oh, do they belong? Can they feel accepted there? And as Asian music, I think, gets even more rich, sometimes you can feel that way. Like even me, I'm like, oh my God, do I belong in the electro space of South Asian music? Because I'm very mainstream Bollywood. So you will have to kind of tackle that. So like you said, if you can get Asian artists who are just doing other music as well, that might be one way to expose them to a broader audience. So you could potentially start there and maybe have the odd specific night that could attract wider South Asian audiences.
Thank
But yeah,
you.
Priya, I hope that's helpful. You've got me on social, so do reach out. I'm more than happy to give more thought to that.
There's a
Gabby,
question.
can I jump in, or do you want to take the question on the chat?
There's just one from Seema in the chat asking if there's one main website advertising South Asian music, dance / cultural events in the UK where you can have kind of filter through the dates, genres and venues, etc. Is there one central space for this, or?
That is a great question. No, there really isn't. Are there generally, because are there those sorts of for other genres, do you think? I'm wondering, because like here, no, I'm wondering, you've got not really, to be honest. That is a good point. I don't know if I think because South Asian music is now quite developed, and there are all of these offshoots, like you've got the mainstream stuff, which you'll get a lot of like notifications from your Spotify or Live Nation or others on those shows. So those big Bollywood ones, no, you'd go to your South Asian like big social media platforms to see those. The diaspora ones, where it's probably the biggest need, no, there really isn't anything. So that could be an area to explore more. You've got the chart now. You've got like the British Asian music chart where you can sort of see the key top artists, but nowhere really that the gigs are. And that's a super interesting question. I actually want to think about that a bit more as to whether there'd be interest in that. If artists might feel, oh, well, if it's my gig and someone else's, is it going to mean I've got less to? So there's some political stuff I'd be keen to kind of think about. But no, there isn't something, I don't think.
John, go for it.
So many thoughts. Thank you for that really informative talk. You've got me daydreaming about Dishoom with its wonderful food, and Echo Belly with their wonderful music as well. Thanks to Priya. Nice to see you again, Priya. I guess we spend a lot of time at Live thinking about the entirety of the UK live music system, and a lot of the themes in your presentations have resonated in terms of strength at the top end. So it's great to have the Glastonbury example. It's great to have record-breaking events at the O2, and we've got that strength at the top. But we spend a lot of time also thinking about the grassroots and the challenges that we face there. Artists being unable to afford to tour, venues struggling to turn a profit, the festival cancellations that we've seen this year. So I guess I had sort of a two-part question for you. One, those challenges at the grassroots, artists touring, venues staying open, festivals going ahead, are they replicated in the UK South Asian music scene? And then probably building on one of a couple of the points in your presentation, thinking about that wider grassroots space, it feels like there's a real untapped resource here in South Asian music. I'm sure. First of all, do you agree? I'm guessing you do. And secondly, how do we do the matchmaker thing to get the music where it needs to be? Because as you say, we often have to demonstrate that commercial return, because that's when we'll really drive change. So sorry for the rambling question.
No, thank you for these questions. They are so important. And I think that's the one thing, we look at a lot at exporting music and the power of that. Well, actually, if we can get some of our artists to reach, India or wherever, like huge potential financially there. But here, like we said, the boiler room type gigs or the daytime, that these are always sold out. These are very, very busy, thriving events. So I think in terms of people are often though using the same types of venues where they know there's a relationship, like that thing I mentioned about the potential risk or buying into something. But like you said, John, can we widen that net so actually here's a venue that's would love some more footfall? Can we tie up South Asian people with that to help that venue be more sustainable as well? I'm actually going to an event tonight, an artist, she's called Saloni Music. She's been getting a lot of support from PRS and BBC. She's launching her EP, and it's at like the Camden Club, and there've been a few South Asian events there and at Notting Hill Arts Club. So there are a couple that we've got good relationships with. But if there's a way of helping people be like, right, here's where you could go, here's where the cost would be, can we create, that open some of those doors? Because there is a lack of awareness and understanding, like I said, from South Asian artists' point of view. PRS are doing some stuff around that, and others, but I still feel like you've got things like Power Up. I think something that could help South Asian artists better understand the ecosystem and opportunities would be great. So yeah, I think there's definitely opportunity to match up, and get people feeling, create those authentic experiences where people feel welcome and safe and stuff as well. I mean, this year has been a bit tricky in terms of obviously diversity and race relations even. So, there is maybe some more apprehension on both sides, but is there a way to kind of, music can always help with that. So definitely, I think there's grassroots opportunities and ways to support venues, but we need some more awareness.
Mm-hmm. I think one for the Live Network, Gabby. I think we need to bring Sanya and the Music Venue Trust together and think about, and maybe bring Featured Artists Coalition into it and think about what initiative we could develop.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be awesome.
I've had a direct question actually from Funko Live Nation about kind of curious to get a sense around female talent. Is there dual challenges?
Oh God, yes.
Role models. So they're saying they're just curious to get a more perspective on that.
Okay, I'm gonna just show you this. And female don't even, you can't, it's very, very difficult. Right. There was a festival this year, sorry if anyone was involved with it, in Amsterdam, not a single female on the lineup of about God knows how many men. Like here as well, you'll see there's a couple, but imagine this lineup with like no women. There was one female DJ, but even here you can see it's very male dominance. So there isn't, and sadly, and even in the global scene, I mentioned artists like Shreya Ghoshal and others who are your playback singers, but from a singer point of view, there isn't a female that's really, you had the odd one, you had Jasmine Sandless and others, and when they'd come to Asian Network live shows, again, let me just show you that. Here's Jasmine Sandless. That's when females could be platformed in a big, big way. But there has been a male dominance here, and there are a lot of other challenges when it comes to women generally in this industry that we face, because it is a niche industry, and that I've got issues around that. But yes, it requires a lot of support. Again, I feel like there's a real lack of understanding among audiences, and artists generally, you need to know who your target audience is, how to market yourself, and I think there's just not that knowledge of South Asian audiences to know how to do that, particularly as a woman.
Okay, fascinating. Are we missing a trick though?
I do think so. I think the reason Jasmine Sanders has done well, a lot of music that's done really well here is Punjabi music. Historically, you had your Jaggi Dees and all of those. That's the sound of the UK. The UK has really driven a lot of the rise in Punjabi music globally, because we don't have too many. A lot of the female artists are a bit more R&B or a bit more like soulful. I think we are. I feel like there's an opportunity. Joy Crooks is of mixed heritage, and you've got Priya Raghu, who's amazing. Obviously, slightly bigger artist, but I do feel that there is an opportunity. We just need to understand it better.
Okay. No, thank you for sharing your perspective. Thanks.
No, of course. Please, again, happy to think about it a bit more, and do reach out to me if I can help anyway. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Great question.
Right, we've got 2 minutes left. So final question from Mark Saunders at the O2. Mark, do you want to come in and ask it, or I'm happy to read it
Yeah,
out?
sure. I don't mind. Just a quick one. Hey, Sonia. Hey, John. Hey, Gabby. Hello, all of you. Just a quick one from my perspective. I'm the booking manager at the O2, and obviously very, very, very happy with how Diljit went in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
But obviously, haven't been there firsthand for booking, Diljit and Karen Aujla as well within a really recent kind of time frame as well. And obviously aware of, huge acts like AP Dillon and Badshah as well. Badshah, who obviously came on as a special guest with Diljit as well, and you could see that kind of level of audience kind of, engagement with him. I was just curious, as who do you think in particular would you say are probably the next kind of acts that we should be keeping an eye out for, who will become the next kind of, the next arena headliners that that might not have done it yet, but will be the kind of next wave to expect?
Oh, that is such a good question. One thing I'll say to Mark, I think Chris reached out to you about helping me get to Vaja, so thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I really appreciate
Sorry,
that.
it's quite last minute. I did it on
No,
the day.
I'm sorry. I was so last minute. I think that it's patchy, because you're seeing now the audience is very like, okay, when AP Dillon played Coachella, because he wasn't the first, a lot of people were quite critical of his performance. So while we thought AP would be the next stadium, I think people being a bit like, oh, well, what was he doing? So I think the audience is quite, they're not going to accept just anything, but we are seeing now, so those stars, it will take time, but a few Pakistani artists are doing well. I think they're doing shows at like the Indigo. There's still some patchiness sometimes in the delivery of shows, but I think things like Coke Studios could be huge. There's stuff like that, or like the awards shows. I'll have a proper think, but I think these guys have created this huge thing, and even Badshah sometimes, I think, it doesn't always, people aren't, maybe they're still building their fan base. I'm a huge fan, but I think compared to Diljit, people are still a bit like, oh, should we see Badshah? So there's just a little bit of nuance in that. But yeah, I'll definitely have a think more, and would love to follow up with you, because it is a bit of a complicated one.
Thanks. I think also we've had a few comments in the chat about kind of mid-sized venue artists as well.
Yeah.
If there was some sort of list of artists at certain levels now that we could circulate, or if there's anything we can do from Live's perspective to raise awareness of who is performing at certain levels at the moment, I think that could be really really useful to lots of the venues who are on this call and within our kind of membership as well. But that's it.
Yep.
We're 1 minute over, so we must wrap up.
Sorry.
Do you have any kind of final words?
No, just thank you so much. And this all sounds great. And I would love to follow up on, like helping list and really help make those connections. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. And yeah, hope it was helpful.
Thanks, Sanya. And thank you everyone for joining today. Thanks, Sanya, for all your efforts and time putting this brilliant session together. I've definitely learnt loads. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your days.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.